And good morning. We're live. Welcome back to another episode of Book Club. this is uh this is now officially Book Club. Oh, I made that new cover art like a couple weeks ago, but you know what? Who cares? It's now officially Book Club because I never called it Book Club before on the podcast. All right. Hope everybody had a great week. Today is October 11th. It's 8:13. I'm about 10 minutes late, but that's okay because I don't live by time schedule. I just do my best. Everyone, I just do my best. I got my cup of coffee. It's ready to go, locked and loaded. I've got my books. Um, if you are not listening to this on October 11th, Monday at 8:14 a.m., then I invite you to come join me in the live stream on 8 a.m. Mountain Standard Time. Otherwise, the podcast is live. It's live on it's live on Twitch. It's live on YouTube. It's live on Facebook. And then otherwise, the podcast is on Spotify and Apple Podcast. And I think it's on like Google Podcast too because it was free to post it there. So, but who uses Google Podcast? I actually get quite a bit of traffic from Facebook after the live stream, which is surprising to me because I've unfriended a lot of people that I don't talk to. Well, I guess my public account is different than the podcast page, but I don't have a lot of anyway. So I'm glad. Wherever you're listening to, I'm glad. I appreciate you. And I hope that this is enriching, enlightening, exciting, entertaining, all of the E words for you. We went camping in Goblin Valley last weekend, and created a religion out there. Because if you have not been to Goblin Valley, there are a bunch of penis rocks, and then we created a religion around penises. It was really funny, but you had to be there. Shoot, you had to be there. Now we're back and we're ready for another week. A lot of rain. Basement flooded. This is not a plug for White Glove, but if your basement floods and you need some water extraction, holla at your boy. That's all I do. I flooded my own basement. I didn't flood my basement. I extracted a flood from my basement before I left for Goblin Valley. Because every time I try to go out of town, my basement floods. That happened last time too. All right. I don't know how to do this one this week because I kind of went down a path that I thought I knew what I was getting myself into with these books that I read this week, but I was totally turned around. So my notes are it's all brand new. So here's what I did. I was recommended Siddhartha by Hermann Hesse, or it might be Hesse, his last name, Hesse, Hermann Hesse. This is a book about the Buddha, Siddhartha Gautama. This book, here's a little background on Siddhartha. Siddhartha is perhaps the most important and compelling moral allegory our troubled century has produced. Integrating Eastern and Western spiritual traditions with psychoanalysis and philosophy, this strangely simple tale, written with a deep and moving empathy for humanity, has touched the lives of millions since its original publication in 1922. Set in India, Siddhartha is the story of a young Brahmin's search for ultimate reality after meeting with the Buddha. His quest takes him from a life of decadence to asceticism, from the illusory joys of sensual love with a beautiful courtesan. Courtesan. I don't know what that means. and of wealth and fame to the painful struggles with his son and the ultimate wisdom of renunciation. And then, after I read it, I was like, this is crazy, because when does Buddha become like a teacher? And I don't want to spoil the book, but I'm going to go through the whole book. Because after I read it, I realized it is considered a what is that word? Or am I having a seizure? Philosophical fiction. Well, there you go. Siddhartha is considered a philosophical fiction. It's not a true story about Buddha or how he became Buddha. Let me get to my notes. So it's just like a story. It's a fictional book about Buddha, about Siddhartha. So here's what I got. Well, before I opened Siddhartha, I'll say after it was like a 3 or 4 hour audiobook. No, you know what? I'm going to save it because I read a second book, but I'm going to save the second book until after I go through this Siddhartha really quick. Okay. So, here is the beginning to the end of the book. And if you don't want to spoil it, then skip this part. Siddhartha, the book started, he was the son of a Brahmin, which, if you don't know what a Brahmin is, the dictionary says a Brahmin is a member of the highest Hindu caste, that of the priesthood. So he was part of a royal family in a high caste. He went from the son of a Brahmin to a samana, which is, it's like in the book, they're like priests that live in the wood, and they live solitary lives, meditating, fasting, suffering, begging for food. But there's way more to it, and I'm probably not entirely correct, but they lived in the forest. So Siddhartha, when he was a young boy, left, according to this philosophical fiction, went from Brahmin to Samana to meeting the Buddha. His name was Gautama, which is that's Siddhartha's real name. But he met the Buddha in this book, then met a lady named Kamala, and wanted to explore his what would you say, like passions and desires, and he wanted to have sex. So he met Kamala, and she taught him how to get money. He became a merchant, and then he became very worldly. In the book, he became a hardcore gambler. He loved to have strippers at his house. And then he became so overwhelmed with all of this, he became suicidal. And he went to the river to kill himself, and then saw in the river visions and fell asleep. And then from his suicidal bout, he met a ferryman, and became his employee. Lived with a ferryman and gave up all of his riches to work and live in the forest and learn from the ferryman. He restored his monk ways. Kamala, upon hearing of the death of Buddha Gautama, needed the ferry to get to see the dying Buddha, ran back into Siddhartha, but she got bit by a snake and died. And she had a son, and it was Siddhartha's son, but the son resented him because he didn't have a dad his whole life for, I don't know, I think he was 12. And then so the son ran away. He searched for his son, and then ultimately gave up his quest on looking for a son. He said it's best for him to learn on his own than to suffer at my hand, because he didn't want to listen to his dad. So then he started worshiping the river. The ferryman taught him many wise things. He ran into his old friend Govinda, who went to be into the forest to become a samana with him. And when they met the Buddha Gautama, Govinda stayed with the Buddha, and Siddhartha continued on his journey and then met Kamala, right? So towards the end of their lives, Govinda and Siddhartha ran back into each other. Okay, so here are the lessons that Siddhartha shared with Govinda from at the end of the book. Self-taught lessons that he learned along his way. Wisdom cannot be passed on. The opposite of every truth is just as true. Meaning a person is never entirely holy or entirely sinful. Time is also not real, which means the gap between the world and eternity, between suffering and blissfulness, between good and evil, is not real. Also, everyone and everything, everyone is everything at the same time. A rock may present itself as a rock now. In time, it may dissolve, become soil, and become part of a person. So, time isn't real. All suffering and joy are experienced at the same time. And everything is part of each other. We're all one. This is like the huge point of Hinduism and their sects is unity. There's unity between all people, all feelings, all consciousness, and we are all divided by our ego. Okay, so that's the end of the book. And then at the end of the book I thought I don't really understand the book. So I did a little bit of research on the book. I asked who or what is Buddha? What are Buddha's teachings in real life, not in this philosophical fiction? So I said who actually was Siddhartha? And Siddhartha's real story was he was the son of a Brahmin, and he was considered holy from his birth, from conception. They said that from the moment he left the womb, he was speaking wisdom. So he was protected by his father. His father did not want him to be accustomed to pain or suffering in the world. So he was surrounded by young, youthful, healthy, happy people all the time. And then at one point, he was in a parade or something and saw some old dudes, and he was like, "Whoa, what is that?" So he chased them and caught them and learned about how they are old and they're sick and they're hungry. And Buddha Siddhartha decided that he was going to abandon his so when he abandoned his heritage, his household, he was like 25 or 27 according to what I read, if I remember. He was a lot older. And he had a wife and a kid at the time. So he left everything and went to I don't know if he went to become a samana or what he did, but he went without food, went without water, and he understood suffering. He wanted to understand suffering. And I think he decided that suffering itself doesn't bring wisdom. Suffering is just suffering, just like pleasure is just pleasure. I think this is part of his wisdom. Suffering is, okay, so 4 Noble Truths from Hinduism. Oh, yeah, okay. So I learned ancient scripts called the Vedas have roots in Hinduism as well as Buddhism. But I think the Vedas is where most of these branches. They're ancient scrolls that branch out into the different Hindu and Buddhist religions. Anyway, the 4 Noble Truths of Buddhism is suffering is everywhere. We desire suffering. There is an end to suffering. And then there's a path to end suffering. There are 8 steps in the path to end suffering. It's all about correctness, correct perspective, but he uses the word right. The Eightfold Path, right view. I'm just going to read them out real fast. Right view, right resolve, right speech, right conduct, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, right concentration. Our actions have consequences. Give up the love of the world. That's right resolve. Right speech is obvious. Right conduct is no murder, no stealing, no sex. Those are the big three. Right livelihood. Possess only what is essential to sustain life. Right effort. Stop negative thoughts about self and others. Right mindfulness is be aware of those thoughts. And then right concentration is accumulation of all of these traits. Concentrating on all of these traits. So that's what Buddhism actually is. And so Siddhartha, from his quest, after suffering, he learned, he just learned like the bare necessities and became the Buddha. And Buddha, if you define Buddha, the dictionary says Buddha is a title given to the founder of Buddhism, Siddhartha Gautama. But many people later on have been given the title Buddha because it really just it can mean Holy One or Ascended One. But the Buddha is Siddhartha, and Siddhartha is the founder of Buddhism. And those are the truths. Those are the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path to End Suffering. And then I got curious and learned about the Dalai Lama. This is a whole world that is untapped to me. The Dalai Lama is a Tibetan Buddhist. So just like Christians, there's a bunch of different Buddhist sects and different all from the same origin, Buddha. Just like all Christians go back to Christ, all Buddhists go back to Buddha. Tibetan Buddhists are a sect out of Tibet in China or near China. I don't know. And they have been severely oppressed by the Chinese government. And the Dalai Lama is... let me see if I remember. Okay, I made this note. The Dalai Lama is a Tibetan Buddhist believed to be a reincarnation of an exalted monk to guide people to nirvana. So I guess you could call the Dalai Lama a prophet. Like a saint or something, if you want to make that connection. But the way that the Dalai Lama is picked is when the Dalai Lama dies, that Dalai Lama is reincarnated into another person after their death. And these Tibetan Buddhists meditate and seek out the new Buddha, the new Dalai Lama, the reincarnated. So this Dalai Lama is old, and the death of the previous Dalai Lama was reincarnated in this guy, and they found him when he was just a little infant. So his entire life has been the Dalai Lama and has been protected and sheltered that way. So that's a pretty amazing is religion. It's just religion, reincarnation. So there's other sects of Buddhism. I mean, this is, like I said, this is a whole new world to me. The reason I am interested in this is because I am doing yoga. And I like, when our instructors move us through poses, they speak in Sanskrit, which is some ancient language that is rooted in Hinduism and Buddhism. It's just from the East, and it has made me curious about the origins of yoga, what the point of yoga is, which leads me to my next book called The Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. And this is I believe he's been alive recently. I think he was alive. Yes, the first printing was in 1978. So his teachings are fairly recent. Um, yoga is okay. Well, before so that's why I'm curious in all of this. I've been curious about Buddha and Buddhism for a while, just as a religious out of religious curiosity, and I've been referred to Siddhartha. And then after I finished this, and it was Tuesday, I said I'm gonna try to find another book, and I wanted to go more down the yoga path, what yoga is, why it exists, and how it's viewed really by the people in the East. And Americans have kind of sensationalized it to just be exercise, but it's what I've learned is yoga is it's like an actual spiritual practice. And I think most people go just because it's difficult. You stretch and you become flexible, and it requires strength. One thing I'll just say really fast: this studio I go to in Ogden, Higher Ground Hot Yoga, has awesome instructors. The atmosphere is amazing. You go through an intense 60 or 90-minute series of poses, and at the end, they ask you to meditate in Savasana, the Savasana pose, which is just laying down on your back. And they encourage it, and they say awesome, sometimes they'll read quotes, or they will sing. One of them will sing a prayer, I don't even know. It's of chants, a prayer of chants, but it really is like super spiritual. And then they'll namaste and then leave the room, and then the students are encouraged to stay and meditate for as long as they need. And most people leave after namaste. They will get up and leave with no meditation. But I think the whole point of yoga is the meditation, like pure yoga. Then I go to another studio in Salt Lake Power Yoga, which is awesome. And it's more just like yoga as a workout. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But it's not what yoga is, as far as I understand, as far as what I'm gathering. So, let's talk about yoga. This book, The Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. So, this guy, hold on. So the book was translated by Sri Swami Satchidananda. Ugh. Book was translated by that fellow Sri, and the picture is Patanjali, I believe, or the picture might be Sri Swami. Ooh, I don't know. I'm going to Google that real fast because I want to be accurate. I'm going to figure out who Patanjali is. Patanjali. Let's see. Who is Patanjali? He was an Indian sage who is believed to have authored or compiled the Yoga Sutras. Okay, that's this book. He's also the father of yoga. Okay, this is cool. He's regarded as the father of modern yoga according to several theories. Patanjali's Yoga Sutras are a compilation of aphoristic Sanskrit sutras. That's the language. Aphoristic Sanskrit sutras on the philosophy and practice of ancient yoga. When did he live, though? When did Patanjali Pantanjali live? Okay. Pantanjali lived in 200 BC. So this fellow, this is Sri Swami. Hey, good morning, Shy Gamer Girl. Hello, Father. I was talking about our religion that we created in Goblin Valley earlier. We're talking about other religions right now. We're talking about yoga and Buddhism. So Pantanjali wrote the sutras, and sutras, I learned, are aphorisms, and I learned that aphorisms are just like short truths. And I understand the easiest way for me to understand sutras or aphorisms are Bible verses or verses. So when you read like a quote or a verse in the scriptures and it stands out to you, that's a aphorism, as far as I understand. And so this Yoga Sutras is a book of yoga aphorisms. So I also learned the definition of yoga. So according to Google and the Oxford Dictionary, yoga is a Hindu spiritual and ascetic discipline, a part of which, including breath control, simple meditation, and the adoption of specific bodily postures, is widely practiced for health and relaxation. So it's it's a spiritual and ascetic discipline. It's not just the ascetic. It's spiritual. It's not just for your body. Anyway, it's a practice. And then these are the little verses of yoga. So let's learn about the Yoga Sutras, the yoga verses of Pantanjali. I got to say, though, I'm kind of disappointed in how I went about this book, because I bought the audiobook. Okay, when I was looking for the audiobook, there were two major options. Let's see if I can find them. Yoga Sutras. There was the audiobook for this actual copy. This was 9.5 hours, a 9.5 hour listen. Because in the book, it will give you the actual text of Pantanjali in the Sanskrit, and then there is a list of, it breaks down the, each syllable or each phrase into its interpretation, and then it gives the interpreted sentence, and then there is dialogue following. So very long read. Then I found there was another option called the Yoga Sutras of Pantanjali. That was, nope, don't play the book. This is TNC. In the book, let me see, view and store. There was this one that was 4 hours long. So I thought, okay, naturally I'm going to read this one, because it looks like it's the same thing, and it's half of the time. And it does not have very good rating in the this audiobook in the Apple Books library. The store, it does not have great ratings. And I read the ratings, and I did a preview. There's the same author, or excuse me, it's the same narrator as Siddhartha. So it was it was like I knew the guy already, kind of had to follow through. But there was zero context. So for a newbie like me, I started listening to it. I got halfway through the audiobook and had zero clue what I was listening to. So I had to Google what the fucking book was, and so that's what I learned, that it's a yoga practice, Bible verses, yoga verses. And this book, there is no the audiobook that I bought, there's no so when I bought the physical copy, I learned, I mean, who cares what I'm saying right now, but I'm just trying to explain why I was why I'm disappointed in my experience. Patanjali wrote the sutras, and it was clearly translated, and the commentary from Sri Swami, who was this guy. That was obvious, but I didn't get this book till yesterday, so I didn't. Okay, so that's clear in the audiobook. This audiobook, it does not explain that at all. I don't know who was talking, who was doing the commentary. And the commentary is completely separate from this. It's just a whole different book. It's a different commentary. And I don't know who wrote the commentary. And the interpretation from the Sanskrit is, when I compare it back and forth, they're not even saying the same thing. He doesn't even mention yoga in the audiobook. So when I go back and look through some of the really big or the really important sutras, in the physical copy, in this copy, it's very clearly written and well defined. And the audiobook that I bought, I do not recommend. I would imagine the sutras by Sri Swami audiobook would be awesome. And I eventually looked at the ratings and the reviews. It's much better rated. It's just twice the length. It's 9.5 hours of audiobook. Anyway, yeah, mashed potatoes. Good morning. It was very confusing. I mean, it was probably like anybody else that's never read the Bible, picking up the Bible and never hearing of God or Jesus or Moses or whatever, and then trying to put the story together. Like, who wrote this book? Who wrote Genesis and Leviticus? Like, who's writing this book? And you have no idea. You have to go somewhere you have to do research to learn who actually wrote the book, when it was written, why it was written. That's how I felt with the audiobook. The physical copy, if anyone's interested in reading the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, get the copy with translation and commentary by Sri Swami Sachidananda. Sri Swami Sachidananda. Nailed it. Okay. That being said, I'm going to go through the notes that I took from the book is broken down into 4 books or 4 chapters. And each book has like 50 sutras. So I didn't get the physical copy. I finished it yesterday. I did book 4 with the physical copy. The first 3 books, I think I got the gist. I just didn't get I don't think it was very authentic. So I'm just disappointed that I kind of feel screwed in my in my experience. Just went 8-3 in a spike rush round while I was listening. Hell yeah, dude. Well done. Are you live? Why aren't you working right now? It's Monday. When are you not working on a Monday? I actually kind of got a light day of carpets to do. I think I want to play with you later. Shy Gamer Girl, what's your listen to reading ratio with books, like audio versus physical book? I probably spent, it's like 90% audiobook. And then in the past, it's been easy because I usually will get the physical copy will be the exact same as the audiobook. So like the last one that I read, Everything is Fucked, a book about hope, was narrated by the author. And if you read and listen to that at the same time, it's word by word. But this is like the Bible. I guess what I'm trying to say, this really is like a Bible. And you know how many different copies and translations there are of the Bible. This one has several different translations and commentary. So this was a more authentic rendition of the sutras, I guess what I'm trying to say. But I really spend most of my reading or listening for this podcast is listening, because I'm cleaning carpets and listening. But yesterday I spent a couple hours. I had the audiobook playing and was trying to follow along because I was so fucking confused. But I think I figured it out. Okay, I'm gonna keep going. Oh, today's Columbus Day. We still celebrate Columbus? I thought we gave up on him. I thought that was super controversial. Whatever. Here we go. The Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. Book 1 is called The Book of Spiritual Consciousness. The Book of Spiritual Consciousness. And if I'm going to try to explain the purpose of the Yoga Sutras before I even get started, I think the purpose, like I said, yoga meaning physical and spiritual. It's a physical and spiritual discipline to bring peace, meditation, and health. And the sutras are verses to kind of explain how to do that and what comes from disciplined yoga. So, the Book of Spiritual Consciousness, Book 1. This this section tries to break down or breaks down our mortality versus our spirituality, and everything that happens is spiritual. So our mortality is a barrier to understanding or experiencing our spiritual, which is, as described, our true self. True life is spiritual. So some notes I made from this book 1. We are to see ourselves as immortals, encompassed by spiritual powers, instead of humans at the mercy. I think he says animals. Okay, I'll start again. We are to see ourselves as immortals, encompassed by spiritual powers, instead of animals at the mercy of nature and other animals. Encourages us not to indulge in sensual pleasures. It will block our spiritual vision, our spiritual eyes. 4 points. Meditation with an object or a scripture or a teacher at your focus results in an exterior examination of scripture, lesson, or object, interjudicial action or inner pondering of the meaning, joy or inspiration, and realization of spiritual being. Meditation. That's a terrible note. I don't think that makes any sense. Yep, we strengthen our will by obedience. The oversoul is the master of all souls. Just like Siddhartha Gautama teaches, we are just like everything is spiritual. Our true being is spiritual. There is you've heard of you've heard of nirvana, probably. Nirvana is the embodiment of all spiritual and consciousness, and that is our ultimate realization. That's our ultimate life, and that they call that the oversoul. So our individual soul is the oversoul, except we are hindered by that vision or that life, that mindset, by our ego and by our passions, our desires, and this and that. Barriers to interior consciousness of your spiritual side include sickness, inactivity, doubt, light-mindedness, laziness, intemperance. I don't remember what intemperance means. Overindulgence. Okay. Drinking, it says. False notions, inability to get into or hold meditation, grieving, despondency, bodily restlessness, and impulses. These are all things that hinder they're barriers to our interior consciousness. Steady application to a principle is the cure to all of these hindrances. Steady application to a principle, like yoga and meditation. Shy gamer girl, intemperance, lack of moderation or restraint. Yeah, overindulging. Thank you. It said drinking alcohol. Don't be an alcoholic. If it is not enough to have intuitions. We must act on our intuitions. We must live the doctrine and know the doctrine. High consciousness brings pure perception of things. I'll also say this as well. The audiobook that I listened to, the commentary was it was almost like a comparison from the Sanskrit translation to Christianity, and I don't have a problem with that. I myself am making Christian comparisons. All I'm saying is, but it was like it was to me again. It was like him. It was this audiobook author commentator justifying the Buddhist perspective into Christianity, but this was just purely translation and commentary on the text. It was awesome. It was apart from all other kinds of religion. But that's book 1. Excuse me. Understand your purpose of life is to connect to your spiritual side. There are barriers to your spiritual side, and we must act to see through our spiritual eyes to gain spirit to open our spiritual consciousness. Oh, indigestion. Book 2, the means. Whoops. Book 2 is the book of the means of soul growth. So, soul growth practices that unionize us with the soul, or to open our spiritual eyes, is fervent aspiration, spiritual reading, and complete obedience to the master. Hindrances from opening our spiritual eyes are darkness of unwisdom, or self-absorption of our physical man, denial of the soul's existence, self-assertion, lust, hate, and attachment. Attached to our spiritual lives, not our physical life. Desiring sensation brings death and rebirth. And I can't remember what the opposite of nirvana is. There's a word for the opposite of nirvana, and really, it's if you do not become enlightened in your life, you will die and be reincarnated and start the process again. And that's what life is. Life is a matter of living. And if you don't accomplish nirvana, you die and come back again, and you keep doing that until you reach nirvana, or you reach this true sense of self, this true spiritual side. You unionize with the one soul, the over soul. The true nature of yoga is ridding selfishness, lust, and hate, and attachment through meditation. Have you ever tried meditating though? It's a new thing for me too, and every time I try really hard to focus in meditation after doing yoga, because I've said before I'm not a super spiritual person anyway, and because I said that I am hindering my spiritual eyes. That's a hindrance to opening my spiritual eyes. I'm not a super spiritual person anyway. When I meditate, I'm a novice as well. I don't have I don't know if I'm doing it right even. But when we do the 60-minute hot yoga, I'm laying down sweaty, tired, and my brain is exhausted. It's a crazy experience to be laying down after working really hard, sweating really hard, feeling tired, dehydrated, nauseous, and trying to focus your brain on letting go of your ego. That's what my instructors are always pushing for. Let go of your ego. Get rid of your ego. Because like the books say, ego is all of these things. It's lust, it's hate, it's also passion and desire. So let go of these things through ego. And when I meditate, I try to focus on myself, my day, my intentions for my day, and my brain always drifts. But one thing I appreciate from Everything is Fucked by Mark Manson is he says that's kind of what meditation is. Meditation is letting your mind go, letting it all go to removing it from yourself, and not needing to be entertained or distracted, but focusing on who you are really. Because when your brain starts to go, you start to think about how you view everything. So when I lay down and I'm super tired and sweaty, I I it's like dreaming while you're awake. You get to you start to see how you view things, view the world, and view certain things happening in your life. So I think that's what, if I'm not misinterpreting the meaning, meditating is letting go of these false notions, or letting go of how we view things, so that we get a true sense of our inner self. And if you take it literally, take the text literally, you open your spiritual eyes to see that you as a soul are greater than your bodily experience. Interesting. Let's see. Holiness is obedience to divine law, to divine harmony. And since obedience to harmony strengthens harmony, therefore joy comes from holiness. Yep. Yep. Holiness is obedience to a divine law, to divine harmony. And obedience to harmony strengthens harmony. Joy comes from holiness. That's deductive reasoning from the Christian translation. The life of the psychic self is misery. There is no cure for the misery of longing for the cure. There's no cure for the misery of longing except to turn the heart to the eternal. Ooh, I took a quote down that I appreciated. All life is a mirror for the soul to know its own face. All life is a mirror for the soul to know its own face. All of our experiences is a reflection of how we see things and who we are. It's for the soul to know its own face. Cool. All right. Now, in this book too, there are 8. He explains. Patanjali explains the 8 means of yoga, of true yoga. Number 1, commandments. I'll just keep going. Rules, right poise, right control of life force, withdrawal, attention, meditation, and contemplation. The commandments of yoga, or the commandments to Patanjali, is non-injury, don't hurt anybody. Truthfulness, don't lie. Abstaining from stealing, honesty. Abstain from impurity, don't fuck hookers. And abstain from covetousness. And which is very similar to the 10 commandments. There's only 5 commandments, so it's a little easier to follow, but very similar to Christian faith, Christian law. The rules to yoga: purity, serenity, fervent aspiration, spiritual reading, and obedience to the master. Those are, he describes more for the more disciplined yogi. 3 main causes of sin are greed, wrath, and infatuation. These things are cured by having better wisdom. And it goes through transgressions. I suck at making notes. Our poise should be focused on the eternal, not on worldly desires. Our aspiration without effort brings weakness, and effort without aspiration brings false strength. It's like having no purpose. Our focus should be on the eternal. This is book 2. A quote that I liked from the audiobook 2 is, prayer is not designed to catch God's attention, but in our allowing God to hold our attention. Do you need to come in here? Do you need to come in here? All right. Good morning. Roommates. What do you do? Prayer is not designed to catch God's attention. Prayer is our allowing God to hold our attention. And I feel the same way about meditation. Meditating is not designed. How would I relate that to meditation? It's meditation doesn't bring eternity to our soul, but rather it's the focus for it. I don't know. Maybe that doesn't work, but I like that quote. All right, Book 3 talks about spiritual powers. This was a pretty crazy section for me, pretty crazy book. And by spiritual powers, it means literally spiritual powers. So, perfectly concentrated meditation includes attention, meditation, and contemplation on an object. Developed through sacrifice. This book talks more about how all matter is related, how all force is eternal, and how all consciousness is one, just like Buddhism, just like what the Siddhartha talks about. Nirvana, the encompassing of all things. I'm going to go through this quick. Yoga is the spiritual man's attainment of full self-consciousness behind and above the natural man. Samyama. Samyama is a term. Okay. This is when I got the physical copy, and I started reading each sutra. Samyama is a term that means concentration, meditation, and union. Samyama on bodilessness of self achieves other kinds of siddhis, which is complete enlightenment. So you become literally very big, very small, very heavy, very light. My notes are all over the place. I know this is tough to go through. I'm sorry. Thanks for sticking around, kind of listening. This I'm just like reading Bible verses. It's not book club anymore. It's Bible study now. True independence is detaching even from these spiritual powers that come through samyama. True independence is detaching even from these spiritual powers that come through samyama. Do not stop for pleasures along the way of your journey. Do not settle for little peace, for little joy, or for petty happiness. Your journey of meditation and of yoga should be for the ultimate attainment of realizing your eternal self, or nirvana. Book 4 is the mechanism of salvation. This was a really short book. A lot of my notes come from the commentary. So he explains the commentary, Sri Swami explains that pretty much every sutra is based around 2 sutras from Book 1, Sutra 2 and 3, which are restraint of the modifications of the mind stuff, or the thinking. Your thinking is yoga. Restraint of the modifications of mind stuff is yoga. Then the seer rests in its own state. Siddha Vritti Nirodha is the practice, and Svaru Pevasthaman is the experience, which means dissolution of the mind is meditation, modification, and restraint. And the seer or the self abides in its own true nature. This is all way above me. I would love to actually learn from somebody who understands these principles. We either act and be responsible for our actions, or we allow to live in our spiritual self and let the theory, every action has a consequence. And if we live in our body, we are responsible for all of our actions. If we live in our mind, we are simply an observer of the actions from our body. We are not responsible for the actions or the consequences. We are simply an observer of these things happening. This is the theory, or this is the teaching. We either act and be responsible, or we allow our mind and body to act and be a witness as the seer. The entirety of yoga is to teach not the seer you, not your spiritual self. Your spiritual self is already there. Yoga is supposed to teach our ego self. The true self, or the seer inside of us, is hindered by the ego. Learn from all things that happen to you or that you do. They are all lessons of the ego. Yep, all experiences, all things that happen can be seen through our spiritual eyes and used as lessons. There's just tons of shit, and this is why I buy the physical copy. I'd love to go through and actually spend more time reading back on the previous sutras that I listened to, because the last book was a lot more interesting, and the commentary was great. They just use crazy words, man. Oh, and I also learned there's a whole an index of, or a glossary that explains all of these words. So just, kind of like going through your Book of Mormon or through the Bible, and there's an index and glossary to find words, spiritual words. Words like anagatam or prakriti. Yeah. It's a lot. It's a lot. So, what did I learn from all of this? I learned a little bit more about Buddhism, which is cool. And I learned about the history of yoga as a novice, and there's all, just like I just can relate it to my experience as a Mormon. And every time you read scripture, every time you go to church, you can apply the same concept and learn something new. And hardly anybody grasps everything right away. Mariah says your sleeve looks very cool. Don't you think? Have you not seen it in real life yet, Mariah? Thank you. I love it too, and I want to get my other arm done now too. So anyway, how am I going to apply this to my practice? Because I love yoga. I love it for the physical aspect. Am I willing to delve into the spiritual realm? I don't know. I think that I don't want to justify or give my own translation to the purpose of life through Patanjali's teachings. I almost find it disgraceful, but I want to be true to what yoga is. I feel as a yogi, I owe yoga my a true experience. I want to be, let's see, what's the word? I don't want to be hypocritical I don't want to take like yoga in vain. I wanted my purpose to be set. Honestly, I started doing yoga because I knew I was not very flexible or mobile, and I got into these classes in Ogden because I wanted to be more mobile in my exercise and in my life. And you know what's so awesome? You know this, mashed potatoes. I have that Osgood slaughter on my leg, that crazy bump, and it is going down. It's going down. It's getting better. And I've had it for 10 years, and it's never improved. And it's now starting to improve I think since doing yoga. I know my body is getting stronger and more flexible. My joints and my tendons, everything is stretching and it's cool. So I appreciate that aspect of it. Anyway. And his muscles are very big. You don't have to put that in quotes. I know that's what you're saying, mashed potatoes. I know you think my muscles are very big. Thank you. Oh, well, that's all I got for today. This was a challenging study for me, but I appreciate the little lessons that I did learn. And I want to do more. I wish there was just like a beginner crash course to yoga and to Buddhism. Or maybe there is and I just don't know about it. I think I got right into the meat of yoga, and yeah, a lot of it's going over my head with the seer and the oversoul, and anyway, that's all I got. Thanks for showing up. Hey, I'm gonna try to kick some ass today real quick, and I'll come play some games with you if you got time. Gonna have to go back and listen to what I missed for Siddhartha's review since I recommended it. Yes, you are a shy gamer girl. I'll tell you this though, I enjoyed it. I was thrown off because I thought it was gonna be like unless you read something different, but I thought this was gonna be like an accurate historical account of Siddhartha. And maybe you don't know this, but it's not. It's considered a philosophical fiction. It's not an accurate account of his life. It's fiction. But some of the events are true. Like, he was the son of a Brahmin, and he did go into the forest and to learn suffering, things like this. But anyway, yeah, go listen to it. I talked about it for the first 20 minutes, I think. Love you guys. Thanks for showing up again. If you want to show up live, it's always Mondays, 8 a.m. 8 a.m. Mountain Standard Time. Yeah, I guess it's Columbus Day or it's Indigenous Peoples Day. Yeah, I think we're supposed to say fuck you to Columbus now. I think he was just a terrible person. We don't celebrate terrible people. But we are in America because of him, largely, right? So do we pay him that respect? It's a hot take. I don't know. Jack shit. We'll be here next week, unless there's another holiday that I don't. Nope, the 18th should be here. So holler my way if you have any suggestions or books, recommendations, and we'll catch you next time. Have a good one.
して